All right. You see that we're recording now, so no swearing.
Okay.
All right. First, state your name, your position, how long you've been doing that position, what school you do it in, and that's it. Let's start there. You're frozen again.
My name is Kelly Dalton. I teach this year, I was teaching seventh grade, but next year our schedule is changing. So I will be teaching sixth, seventh, and eighth grade starting next year. I've been doing that since 2001 when I graduated college. So I've been at this school. I was at a couple other schools before that, but this school, I just finished my 19th year there.
I can't believe it. 19 years. That's
19 at just
amazing.
that school. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That is amazing. Okay, well, thank you for that. So the first question is, so I know what do you teach? Did I ask you that?
I teach PE and health.
Okay, so in your particular situation, this might be a little unique because parent-teacher conferences generally are perhaps a little bit different in your circumstance than in a more gen ed.
Actually, probably not
No.
because I work at a middle school. The kids are on teams, and so the PE teachers are part of the teams. So we actually have parent conferences along with the other core teachers.
Oh,
So like
good.
the parents come in and we set ourselves up in the gym and they go from table to table talking to other students, teachers.
Oh, okay. Different than what it was when I was growing up, Sonny.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
yeah, it was a little bit different. So what do you do to prepare in advance for your parent-teacher conferences,
All
uh,
right.
to make sure that they're
So
productive and focused?
so the parents want to know how their student is performing in class, right? And that's no different for PE. So basically, what I do is we talk about, I'll pull up their grades for whatever quarter they're in at that time that we're doing conferences. We'll talk about behavior as well. Um, but one of the main things that I do talk about is fitness testing because that's like the state test for PE. So
Mhm.
I can't really talk about like the what do they call it? The park test and which is like remember the ISAT testing.
Oh
It's
yeah.
basically that. So that's like our form of that. So the parents can find out how their students are actually performing in PE physically amongst other students that are their age. So for each category. So we have muscular strength, muscular endurance, flexibility, all those different categories. There's a test for them. And so then their score is based off of what other students in the whole nation, what they should be, like what a student that age should be. And so then the parents can see how they're performing up against other students that are that age. So that's one of the things that I'll pull up and make sure that I have so I can talk to the parent about that. And then, like I said, we'll talk about grades because we do tests. We have written tests in PE. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about their performance in like skill tests and tournaments. And then we'll also talk about their behavior. For the most part, it's, it's middle school kids. So it's going to be goofing around with friends and things like that. Nothing too major.
Right, right. What strategies do you use to create a welcoming and respectful environment during the conference?
So we are required to actually have a sign on our table with our name and who we are. I always greet the parents, stand up, shake their hands, just kind of opening my space up to, uh, so that the teacher or the parent feels welcome talking to me. Um, I feel like you know, we're I have a really good relationship with my parents. I keep in contact a lot throughout the school year. So a lot of them, maybe they don't know me by my face, but by the time that they come in, we've already spoken through email or phone at some point. So they basically kind of already know who I am. So I already kind of have that rapport with them before they even come in to see me.
What like do you reach out to parents even if the kid's doing well?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Actually, that's what they want to hear. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily want to hear that when their students doing poorly. So it's really important to contact them when the kids are doing well. That's what they want to hear about. That's what they want to know. And again, that's going to help build that like positive rapport with that parent as well, and the student. I mean, the student hears that, oh, your PE teacher called to tell me that, you did this in class today and that was really awesome. So then the kid appreciates that too. So it helps build not only a relationship with the parents, but also the students as well.
Students, exactly. That's great. I like that a lot, actually. So,
Yeah.
going to the other side of the spectrum, when you have things going really awesome, you can call the parent. So, what happens if you have to have a difficult conversation with the parent,
Yeah.
especially when discussing concerns about a student? How do you handle
So typically, if it's something to do with behavior, I always email because then there is a written,
paper
there's a
trail?
document, the documentation of it. What was said, how it was said, the date that it was sent, and that way, if anything ever comes back, then because sometimes if it's a repeated behavior, then that kind of gets sent to upper admin, and then they have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So at least you have like a log or a documentation of what you have already contacted to the parent. Um, it's more like I'll start off, just telling them about what happened in class and then talk about like what my expectations are. And then I'll kind of end it with, like, can you talk to your student at home about the situation? And then I always like thank them for the support, basically just kind of ending it like as they're on my side, hoping that they're on my
Mhm.
side. Um, I typically don't email home unless it is something that has already been addressed at least one other time in my class. Because usually that initial behavior is going to be a conversation with the student just from me. And then anytime it happens again after that, we're required to write the student up. And anytime we write the student up, we're required to contact home. So the student is already kind of like aware of what's going to happen. Like they know that if it happens again, they're going to be contacted home. So at least they're prepared to have that conversation with their parent when they get home.
Oh, got it. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. What information do you prioritize sharing with your parents to ensure they leave with a clear understanding of their child's progress?
At conferences,
Yes,
we go back to conferences.
correct. Correct.
What am I prioritizing? Is that what you're asking?
Right. So, what information do you prioritize sharing with your parents to ensure they leave with a clear understanding of their child's progress? So, this helps define what matters most in terms of student growth and success.
Okay. So at my school, and I don't know how it really is at other schools, but at my
Oh, you froze. Oh, no. You froze.
or the teachers, so I don't have to deal a lot with like the behavior issues during conferences. Like I said, it's mostly talking about how that student is progressing in my class. So it'll be, we'll talk about like grades and then also like the physical fitness testing.
Yeah.
The physical fitness testing, while it's important, it's not for a grade. So like I'm not grading students on their ability to do these certain tests. Like there's not a there's not a pass or a fail for the test. They're either in the healthy fitness zone is what it's called, or they're not. And then I can talk to the parents about what the student can do to get themselves into the healthy fitness zone. We also work on that in class every day in warm-ups too. Um, but I guess the priority would just be how that like what the student can do to either maintain the good grade that they have or what they can do to build on it or make it better. When we get into health, that's a lot more like classroom based stuff. So,
Mhm.
assignments and projects and tests and quizzes. So, we'll talk more about like how they can study or the things that they can do to get their homework in on time. That's more of like the priority about what those conferences are going to be for.
Mhm. When I was in school, and this goes back a little bit, so bear with me a second, there were people who refused to do anything in PE class.
Yeah,
They would walk around and they wouldn't dress out, they wouldn't do anything. So,
right.
how do you deal with those types of situations? Like they're just going to refuse not, they're just going to refuse to do PE, period.
Yeah.
How do you address that type of situation? Just curious.
So there's not really an option to not change. And our kids are pretty good about that because they know that if they don't have their uniform for the day, like let's say they took it home to wash it and they forgot to bring it back,
Yeah.
we have a loaner system. So they have to wear like our loaner uniform, which is real ugly. It's like this ugly yellow shirt with like these dark green shorts, and they stand out, because the other uniform, their regular uniform is a gray t-shirt with black shorts. So
Yeah.
if they're wearing a loaner uniform, they're kind of standing out and they don't want to stand out.
Yeah.
And so they typically, they're pretty good about remembering to bring their uniforms. Um, as far as like not participating in PE, that's a different story. That happens a lot. They do have a daily grade, and so their grade is based off their participation in class. So they points if they're not participating. At the end of each unit, we also do like a skill assessment,
Hmm.
and it's basically where we observe them and evaluate their performance in tournament play. So if they haven't been participating, in the unit up until that point, they're not going to do very well on that skill assessment because they haven't been practicing the skills. So that's always kind of like an encouraging thing. Like you need to participate in the games, so that you do well in the actual tournament play and get a good grade on your skill assessment. Our grades at that school are a little bit different. They are based off of their weighted grades. So they have a practice grade, which would be like homework, or in PE's case, it's like their daily grade,
Yeah.
their daily points. And then they also have a formative assessment grade, which would be like quizzes, but in PE, it would be our skill assessment. And then they also have a summative assessment, which would be like the unit test, the final, the summative test for that unit.
Yeah.
And those, the summative and the formative assessments are both, they're worth 40% each of their entire grade. So it's a lot. If the kid doesn't do well on it, it does take their grade down. So that's kind of motivation for them to do well,
Mhm.
or participate, so that they do well on that formative assessment or that skill assessment.
So, how do you work with the parents on those students who just refuse to participate? I mean, what is there to be done? You're
It's hard because the middle school level, this is everybody is kind of like, they're competing for, who's the coolest and everything. And so like a lot of people, or a lot of the girls, sometimes, most of the time it's girls, it's not cool to participate in PE. So sometimes it's just a conversation. Like we try to make it like more fun. Like, what are the things that you like to do? And then we talk about how like that could be a separate unit, but you got to do this unit while we're in it.
right.
Um,
Now you're frozen again. Ah, you're frozen. Kelly, you're frozen. No. Oh, there you are. You were frozen there, so the rest of the question went out the window.
oh, sorry.
That's okay. So just go back real quick to the whole the parents conversation that you would have for people who
Yeah.
for the students who just refuse to participate.
So it could be a struggle because it's like I said, the parents are like me. It's kind of like we're trying to figure out how to motivate that student. The biggest thing is we have to find what motivates that student internally. And it's difficult to deal with because now everything is like, they've got their phone, they've got social media, like everything is like instant gratification. It's difficult for them to
Right.
like find some like intrinsic motivation where they can just find something that motivates them that's outside of technology.
Right.
Um, Sometimes it's food. Kids that age at the middle school level, they'll literally do anything for a bag of Takis. So, it's more like
Um,
having a conversation with that student about trying to find out like what is it that motivates them. Is it getting a good grade? Is it being physically fit? Is it having fun? Is it being on a team with their friends? Sometimes it just takes something easy like that, like, oh, I'll
mhm,
put you on a team where you're actually with your friend, and then that motivates them to participate a little bit more.
mhm. Can you talk a little bit about what do you besides doing the daily physical education, do you host events for parents out besides open house and things of the like? I mean, is there opportunities to get parents and community involved, especially in your world of PE and health?
Not not really, unfortunately. We tried to do like an intramurals program, which isn't necessarily for the community, but it's could get kids that aren't necessarily involved in athletics, participating in some kind of outside of school or outside of the house activity. The problem that we run into with that is that our gyms are constantly being used for athletics. So like in the fall there's softball and soccer and
Mhm.
and then in the winter we've got wrestling and volleyball and basketball, and then in the spring it's used for not cross country, track, and I forget what other sport there is, but
Yeah.
it's just there's not really a way to, we don't have a space basically to do those things that we would like to do. um I know you said outside of doing like an open house, we do like it's not a curriculum night. It's more like we started doing this in place of conferences. Like we used to do conferences twice a year. We would do it in the fall and then we would do it again in the spring.
Right.
Um, and the spring one used to be like a student led conference. It still kind of is, although it's not as official as that. It's more like the kid takes the parents through their like schedule and they talk about like the things that they're doing in class. They can show work that they've done or whatever. So for PE, what we do is we set up the gym with whatever units we're doing. So like if we're doing, let's say, volleyball, like one grade's doing volleyball, one grade's doing basketball, and the other grade is doing floor hockey. We'll have those three sports set up in the gym, and then the parents can come in and play that sport with their student on that night.
Ooh.
But again, that's only one night, so
Yeah. Well, that's something. I think that's
it's
something
something.
better than
Yeah,
nothing, you know. Um, so, what tips do you have for encouraging ongoing communication, partnership with families after the conference? So we talked a little bit about it. Obviously, you're staying in contact with them via phone and via email. But
yeah.
are there any other tips that you have for encouraging that line of communication to stay open?
Um, just making sure that you're contacting home even when the student is doing well, because that's, I feel, more important.
Mhm.
Um, because the parent does want to hear that, and like I said, that helps your relationship with the student too. So it's kind of twofold. It's you're creating that rapport with the parent and you're maintaining it throughout the year by keeping in touch with them, but then you're also kind of like building that relationship with that student as well by doing that, because they like to know that they're being told, that their parents are being told good things about them.
Mhm.
um I don't know, that would be like my biggest tip, is just to stay in contact with them all year.
Yeah. What about, so have you been in situations where parents are very standoffish and defensive about students' behavior? And talk about how do you deal with that situation? I
um
mean, I mean, you're a fantastic person, you know, in my many years I've known you. So, you know, for me, I would never walk in knowing being on the defense with you, but I'm sure there are parents out there that
yeah,
you have that situation,
definitely.
you
I
know.
feel like we grew up in a different age than these kids are. Like
Mm,
if you and I got in trouble at school, we would be in trouble when we got home.
yeah.
A lot of the case, that's not necessarily the case nowadays. There are a lot of parents that will, I don't want to say side with their student, but they do. They side with their student over the school.
Mhm.
So if it's something that's like serious, we get admin involved, because admin, it's important for them to be involved in that. If there's ever like a situation where the parent is being defensive and maybe verbally abusive, that's not something that the teacher should have to deal with. That's admin. That's an admin job. That's never happened to me, thank God.
Right.
But we have had students that would be on the defensive side, or I should say parents that were on the defensive side. I did have one parent where I brought up the lack of participation for their student at conferences, and they were like, well, she does cheerleading and dance outside of school. And that was like their defense on why she doesn't participate in PE. And so like I had to kind of like explain like that's not, it's not like an either or thing. Like when she's here, she has to be participating in school. That dance and that cheerleading isn't a grade. Like her PE class is a grade. So they don't like cancel each other out. It's great that she's participating in those things outside of school, but she needs to be participating in class too. So I think it's more just having that like logical conversation sometimes helps bring them a little bit, back to earth and realize like why that logic is like why they, you
Well,
know,
why it's not logical. You know, why
right, exactly,
that
right,
that defense doesn't make sense because you're
right,
not getting a grade in cheerleading, are you? I mean, you're getting a grade in PE.
right, right. So
Yeah,
it's just, I don't want to say like getting them to side with me, but at least seeing like my side of it.
right. No, they don't have to like it. They just have to understand it.
Right. And at the beginning of the year, if you're very clear about your expectations and that's communicated home, then there's no real argument about it. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there's not really a reason for that parent to be defensive or argumentative about that throughout the school year.
Right. Exactly. So I think that's all that I have on that subject. So I'm gonna, unless you have something else to add, I'm gonna turn off the recording and then I want to catch up with you. We have
Sure.
about 4 minutes left on the Zoom before
Okay.
it zooms out. So I'm stopping the recording now.